This is an excerpt from the narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. This excerpt was adapted by Actively Learn staff for student use and is titled Priceless Instruction. Frederick Douglass was an enslaved person whose owner tried teaching him to read before her husband told her it was illegal and dangerous. Douglass was able to keep learning on his own. While he loved reading, he also realized how different it made his current situation. When I first met my new mistress, she had a kind heart and gentle feelings. She had never had a slave under her control before me. Before her marriage, she had taken care of herself. She had worked as a weaver. By working hard at her business, she had been mostly unaffected by the ruining and dehumanizing effects of slavery. I was completely surprised by her goodness. I hardly knew how to act around her. She was entirely unlike any other white woman I had ever seen. I could not approach her the same way that I approached other white ladies. The way that I had been taught before was all out of place. The crouching servility, usually so acceptable a quality in a slave, did not appeal to her. She seemed to be disturbed by it. She did not think that it was disrespectful or improper for a slave to look her in the face. The meanest slave was put fully at ease in her presence, and none left without feeling better for having seen her. Her face was made of heavenly smiles and her voice of tranquil music. Unfortunately, her heart did not remain kind for very long. The fatal poison of irresponsible power was already in her hands and soon started its hellish work. Under the influence of slavery, her cheerful eye soon became red with rage. Her sweet, harmonious voice changed to one of harsh and horrid discord. Her angelic face was replaced by that of a demon. Very soon after I went to live with Mr. and Mrs. Auld, she very kindly started to teach me the alphabet. After I had learned this, she taught me how to spell 3- and 4-letter words. Right then, I was learning to spell short words when Mr. Auld found out what was going on. Mr. Auld immediately stopped Mrs. Auld from teaching me anymore. He told her that it was unlawful, as well as unsafe, to teach a slave to read. To use his own words further, he said, "If you give any of them an inch, he will take an ell. A slave should know nothing but to obey his master and to do as he is told to do. Learning would spoil the best slave in the world." He said, "If you teach that boy how to read, there would be no keeping him. It would forever make him unfit to be a slave. He would at once become unmanageable and of no value to his master. As to himself, it could do him no good, but a great deal of harm. It would make him discontented and unhappy." These words sank deep into my heart, stirred up feelings inside me that lay sleeping, and made me think entirely new thoughts. It was a new and special revelation. It explained dark and mysterious things that my young mind had struggled to understand. I now understood something that had been very puzzling to me: the white man's power to enslave the black man. It was a grand achievement, and I prized it highly. From that moment, I understood the pathway from slavery to freedom. It was just what I wanted, and I got it when I least expected it. I was sad that my mistress no longer was going to be able to help me, but I was happy about the priceless instruction that my master had accidentally given me. I knew that it would be very hard to learn without a teacher, but I started with strong hope and determination to learn to read, despite any trouble it might bring me. The strong manner with which my master spoke and tried to convince his wife about the evil consequences of teaching me to read convinced me that he deeply understood the truth of what he was saying. It convinced me that the results that he suggested would occur if I learned to read. What he most dreaded, I most desired. What he most loved, I most hated. What to him was a great evil, to be carefully shunned, was to me a great good, to be diligently sought. The argument which he had so warmly urged against my learning to read only served to inspire me with a desire and determination to learn. In learning to read, I owe almost as much to the bitter opposition of my master as to the kind aid of my mistress. I acknowledge the benefit of both. I was now about 12 years old, and the thought of being a slave for life began to bear heavily upon my heart. Just about this time, I got hold of a book entitled The Columbian Orator. Whenever I could, I used to read this book. One of the most interesting parts in it was a conversation between a master and his slave. The slave was described as having run away from his master 3 times. The dialogue described the conversation that they had when the slave was captured the 3rd time. In this dialogue, the master presented the whole argument in support of slavery, but the slave successfully refuted his claims. The slave was made to say some very smart as well as impressive things in reply to his master. The things he said had the desired, though unexpected, effect. The master emancipated the slave. In the same book, I met with one of Sheridan's mighty speeches that supported Catholic emancipation. These were special documents to me. I read them over and over again with intense interest. They gave words to thoughts that I had on my own, which would frequently flash through my mind and then die away because they needed to be spoken. The moral I learned from the dialogue was the power of truth over the conscience of even a slaveholder. What I got from Sheridan was a bold denunciation of slavery and a powerful vindication of human rights. The reading of these documents enabled me to speak my thoughts and to refute the arguments brought forward to sustain slavery. However, while they made one thing easier, they brought on something even more painful. The more I read, the more I was led to abhor and detest my enslavers. I could think of them only as a band of successful robbers who had left their homes, gone to Africa, stolen us from our homes, and in a strange land, reduced us to slavery. I loathed him as being the meanest as well as the most wicked of men. As I read and thought about it, that very discontent which Master Hugh had predicted would follow my learning to read had already happened, to torment and hurt my soul to unspeakable anguish. As I writhed under it, I would at times feel that learning to read had been a curse rather than a blessing. It had given me a view of my wretched condition without the remedy. It opened my eyes to the horrible pit, but to no ladder upon which to get out.